we have bridged the gap, and I've helped her in those arenas raise her standard to the point where she's even surpassed me in some regards, and vice versa. Now I have a therapist. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, assuming you don't settle,
Right.
and assuming you find a way to integrate these gaps.
That literally, if you step out of the way, they're just going to roll right on backwards. Why? Because they don't have the same degree of a growth orientation as you do, and or they don't have a growth orientation at all, and that is possible. So they have a fixed mindset. They are not reflecting and self-reflected in the inner world, in the growth journey, and or they don't have a mindset around trying to continuously improve. They maybe don't even have goals. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. Today we have episode 159. Which of these roles are you playing in your relationship? There's 3 of them. Just building some suspense. Little suspense. Anticipation. There's 3 roles. Which role are you playing? Which role? Okay, before we jump into this episode, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show. And I'm not even sure how many others anymore. I know we work with over 70 podcasters at this stage. So if you want to start, grow, monetize, or scale your podcast, that is all we do to an alarming extent. No, seriously, reach out. Let us know. Get your message out into the world. As always, my love, ladies first.
My intention for this episode, there are 3 roles that we talked about, and this is also going to be a relationship talks event 44 recap, but don't worry, if you didn't come, you're not going to get all the nuggets, just some good stuff. And if you did come, this is a good recap and retouch. But either way, my intention for this episode is to make sure that you dear listener, are walking away with the value of the 3 roles that we reviewed in this relationship talks event. And I deeply believe that this was one of the bigger elements that came through. It was very obvious when we shared this. The audience was like, whoa, yeah, this is my experience. Me too. I'm not alone in this. And so if you're a growth-oriented individual, which obviously you are by listening to this episode and to the Conscious Couples podcast, you will find yourself in one of these 3 roles. So we're going to identify, and then we're going to dig deep, and then we're going to help you in this podcast scroll away, identifying the more empowering role.
Okay, so this is the Conscious Couples podcast, meaning we're going to take something that's probably happening unconsciously and bring it to the surface. Okay, so if you didn't know you were playing one of these 3 roles, all of us are probably playing all 3, but what's the main one that you're in at different times? So in the event, there was a lot of different things that were said. One of the things that I want to bring up is something that you put on the slides, my love, the 1 in 60 rule. Okay, so the purpose of this podcast is to help you flourish in your intimate relationship. How do you grow together and not grow apart? The 1 in 60 rule is something in aviation where essentially an airplane, if it's 1 degree off, when it gets 60 miles away, it's an entire mile off course. So we've all been in a situation in our relationship where we didn't even realize, holy crap, we've been really off lately. We didn't even realize we're miles off course. What happened? How did this happen? How did we get here? And the point of this podcast is every single week you're going to check in and make sure you're not off course. Because if you get, let's say you're 1 degree off, you get 1 mile down the runway, no big deal. Okay, 2 miles, 4 miles, 8 miles, 16 miles. When you get to 60 miles, you're literally miles apart, 1 mile apart in this math. And same thing happens in an intimate relationship. You get into a relationship. Okay, first year, all good. Second year, 4th year, 8th year. The gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we're going to bridge the gap here. Good.
So the gap that we're talking about, and that 1 degree to bridge this analogy to what our conscious couples community faces every single day, that is the connection point that two people in a relationship come together. So picture you and your partner, or you and a past partner if you're a conscious single. Every single day, how are you connecting? Are you FaceTiming each other? Are you texting each other? Are you sending emails, exchanging little love letters? I don't know. But there's one way that you two are likely connecting on the day-to-day, right? And so that connection point, regardless of the medium that you happen to choose, that is you and your partner in some way, shape, or form, bringing that connection to the we back together and bridging what we call the growth gap. So the growth gap is essentially you and your partner never connecting, or certainly never connecting in the aspect that is growth oriented, that as a listener of this podcast, you inherently are.
So I've been coaching a lot of individuals, you have too, over the years, and what we've seen happen commonly with our clients is that they start to lose their friends, they start to create a gap between their partner. So when you go on a growth journey, you start learning all these things, you start making the unconscious things conscious, and basically what happens is you start to outgrow people.
Yeah.
When you have a big goal or dream, let's say you have a new goal, and you start a fitness journey and your partner doesn't join you in that fitness journey. You're learning about fitness, you're learning about nutrition, you're finding new friends at the gym, you're part of these clubs, maybe you're doing CrossFit. All of a sudden, you and your partner don't have something in common anymore. All of a sudden, you're spending a bunch of time away. All of a sudden, you have this new group of friends that you spend time with that's super fitness oriented. That's one very tangible example of growing apart. And it might not be a big deal 6 weeks in, but 6 years later, oh, so now I'm in shape and now you're insecure at the beach. Now we can't do these things together. I want to be a part of this. But if you had checked in earlier with one of these 3 roles, you could have bridged that gap and you could have gone on this journey together.
Exactly.
So here's the truth of the matter. I use this analogy often on this podcast. I think it's really important. If Emilia and I want to drive across the country and we have a core value in conflict. Let's say she wants to listen to music that I don't like. Now we're going to irritate each other along the way. And when you're driving across the country with someone, I said this at the event, I said agree to disagree is actually not practical when it comes to someone you live with. So you had a client that you had mentioned.
And or in an intimate relationship with.
Exactly. And you've talked in the past about negotiables, musts, must-nots. So if I smoked cigarettes, that would be a must-not for Emilia.
Hard no.
So a lot of people would say, well, let him smoke. It's an agree to disagree. Listen,
no.
If you have an acquaintance that you see once a year that smokes cigarettes, not a big deal. If you live with them and that's a hard no for you, that's a boundary, you can't just agree to disagree. You have to find a way to come together. So one of the main points that I wanted to share here today that happened at the event is I feel like I made this finally land. Emilia and I live together. If I'm going on a fitness journey and she's not joining me, there's huge implications to that.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So when Emilia and I first got together, she had done a lot more inner work. She started doing therapy when she was 12. I didn't have a therapist at the time. And now I do, and I've been doing therapy for years. She helped me raise my standard in that arena. And when I first met Emilia, I was very, very, very into fitness, and she wasn't nearly as far along in that journey. And now we're over 1,000 days of exercise and all this stuff. But I think that what a lot of things happen in couples is, well, just let them be them, no big deal. I understand. I don't want to change who Emilia is. She doesn't want to change who I am. But if her and I are driving across the country in this metaphor and she listens to screamo music and I can't stand it, we're going to have to talk about it. We're going to have to bridge the gap and say, you know what, sweetheart, this is a core value in conflict. If she wants to go to Vegas and I want to go to California, Southern California, we're going to have to take separate cars. Or if she wants to go the northern route and I want to go the southern route, we're going to have to take separate cars. So my question for you, love, before we get into the 3 things is, what do you say to someone who wants to believe? I mean, you and I in the past, we dealt with shit we would never deal with again. You had a past partner who kept smoking cigarettes and it bothered you tremendously. What would you say about the agree to disagree thing now?
So when you just shared that, love, something comes up not only in my personal experience, but also in hearing the cognitive distortions that a lot of clients experience. So cognitive distortions is something where you want to believe something it is Like, let's say you want to believe that the sky is purple, but in reality, the sky is actually blue, or it's more of a reflection of the water molecules that it's picking up on, right? The cognitive distortion that we have is so often reflected upon people. And a lot of the times, people, humans in particular, we want to believe that when we're in relationship with something, we are not inherently influencing them. So we're not going to change someone. So that belief system of, I don't want to change my partner. If you're in connection with someone and or any degree of relationship, it's not just if you live with someone, but it's if you're in any sort of connection to someone, what you change in your life is going to have a ripple effect change in their life.
Always.
And vice versa. So what I would say now to answer your question more directly is I do think that that is a crock of crap that I think a part of me wanted to believe when I was younger, and more naive and more ignorant. And also I didn't recognize how many cognitive distortions I had. But now that I've done a lot of this work and we've done a lot of research and we've had a lot of experience with so many people around the world and different age brackets and different psychosocial backgrounds, we have come to understand that there is that law where that which you study you inherently influence, and or that which you're in relationship to, you are inherently changing by default of how change works.
So the next question becomes, how do you know when it's something that needs to... So Emilia, in our relationship, probably a year or so ago, you said, agree to disagree. I said, sweetheart, that's not real.
Yeah.
We live together. This is something we have to address and figure out if we have to get on the same page. And so Emilia and I on the Conscious Couples podcast, we believe in integration.
Kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
Back then.
I think that I tend to be extremely practical and rational in this stuff. Like in the past, love, I lived with people who binge drank.
Yeah.
I lived with people who smoked weed in my apartment constantly.
Yeah.
I lived, and I realize in hindsight that, okay, I don't smoke marijuana. I had friends in the past that when they would smoke, they'd be like, oh, don't worry, this won't change our friendship. It always did, because they were getting high all the time.
Yeah.
And that's okay for them. Here's the deal. If you want to be a distant friend, it doesn't matter. Smoke if you want. But if you're going to get high all the time, constantly, and you're going to do bong rips in our apartment, I'm going to have to move out. And that's just the truth. And I think that one of the unfortunate truths about this event, we're going to get into these 3 types, is that I think a lot of people end up settling in their relationship instead of finding a way to integrate. Mm-hmm. So Emilia loves adventure. She loves travel. She loves the mountains. She loves nature. What if I was like, agree to disagree. Go hike alone. That's not going to work. You can build a magnificent life together and you can integrate. So I adore fitness. She adores adventures and hikes. Let's choose hikes that incorporate fitness where I can be an athlete and she can get her nature fix in. And I think that that's a really powerful belief system that we can bring up here.
I agree. And I would add one caveat before we start to go into the roles is when back then, agree to disagree. I think that is a coward's way out of not knowing how to integrate. So back then it was, in hindsight, it's very obvious to me now that back then I didn't know how to communicate what I needed to in order for us to bridge that gap, in order for us to integrate whatever it was that we were disagreeing on. And I was likely emotionally exhausted to the point where I don't know if I can put together these strings for us to be able to integrate, but that doesn't mean we're never going to come back and address this topic. So as it pertains to a lot of couples, what I do think that people will go to is that lever, because they too, in some way, shape, or form, maybe not to the extent that I was in that moment, but I would imagine to some degree that they don't necessarily have the levels of self-belief to be able to bridge that gap. And that's where a lot of, clients that we work with in relationship talks coaching, whether it be the one-on-one sessions or the hybrid model, the 4-way sessions that break out into the one-on-ones and then come back, we do a great job at helping couples really bridge that gap and learn the language and the perspective, the mindset shift that needs to happen, aka the underlying beliefs that need to get sussed out in order to bridge that gap, in order to feel like you actually can integrate. Because a lot of couples, when you have someone who's been smoking and or, have a lifestyle of dancing and going out and partying, all that stuff, and then you get in a relationship with someone who's hardcore straight bender, they might not necessarily know how to integrate. And that's where a lot of couples I see find themselves.
So in this couple that we used in the example anonymously that we've coached in the past, the male was drinking and smoking regularly.
Yeah.
And the female in the relationship, it wasn't agree to disagree. It was eventually, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be with someone who is doing this. So that person quit drinking and smoking cold turkey to bridge the growth gap that we identified. So the name of the event, love, was getting on the same page about personal growth. Okay, so for everyone out there who wasn't able to attend, right here, right now, in this episode, let's address some of the key components of this event, because if you don't get on the same page about personal growth, you are going to grow apart. Period. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. If I could break down the mathematics of relationships and just show the geometry of this, in the past, I was in relationships with people. One of my past partners, I was on a big fitness journey, and she was going out partying regularly and clubbing, and she would want me to go, and I didn't want to go. And I tolerated it, and I went. And in hindsight, it's like, there's no way that this was going to end up working. And so at the end of the day, let's bridge that personal growth and personal development gap right now. So the three types, by the way, are, the first one is the pusher, the second one is the nudger, and the third one is the inspirer. We're going to go through each, but the first thing we want to do here is, everyone out there watching or listening to this, identify what the growth gap is with you and your partner. Have you ever sat down with your partner and said, we got to get on the same page about personal growth?
Yeah.
Emilia had a much higher growth orientation in the inner world. She had done therapy since she was a young girl. She had done the inner work a lot more than I had when we first met. I was much further along in fitness and in business at the time. Okay, but I also have 7 years on her. But we have bridged the gap, and I've helped her in those arenas raise her standard to the point where she's even surpassed me in some regards, and vice versa. Now I have a therapist. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, assuming you don't settle, and assuming you find a way to integrate these gaps.
So one of the things that we constantly hear in the natural languaging of clients, of people within the community, is I feel, and this is coming from the growth-oriented partner, I feel like I'm constantly having to pull him or her up the freaking hill. I feel like I'm constantly having that to push them to read that book. I feel like I'm constantly having to push them just to write down their habits.
And you felt that way in the past? I
constantly feel like I have to push them to have growth-oriented conversation. I felt that way 100% in the past.
Same.
So if you felt that way ever in the past and or in your relationship right now, you are in the pusher role.
The picture for everyone out there watching or listening that we used in the event, you did this. It was a person trying to push a huge boulder up a mountain.
Yep. Vertical mountain like this.
A vertical mountain with a boulder about to get crushed by your own wild hopes and dreams being smushed. That's how I've felt in the past, genuinely. It felt like, why am I always the one who has to push you to try to go for your goals? And I told myself after my last relationship, before I met Emilia, I needed someone who was more goal-oriented than me.
Right.
And I found my love.
You got it. Yeah. So the components of this, and so grateful for that, because same. The components of the pusher, really, if you're the growth-oriented person, you're the one that has this growth orientation more than in tenfolds than your partner. And the growth orientation is mixed of like your growth mindset, lifestyle habits that are helping to continuous improvement.
Size of your goals.
Right? Like there's things that are helping you move forward in life. And that is very tangible, tactical. So you have habits, you're reading, you're learning, you're exploring, you're adventuring in some way, shape, or form. You're constantly improving, right? That's the growth orientation that you inherently have. Hence why you're pushing forward with life. And your partner, it feels like you're having to push them up the hill because they, kind of in this analogy, are the boulder that literally, if you step out of the way, they're just going to roll right on backwards. Why? Because they don't have the same degree of a growth orientation as you do, and or they don't have a growth orientation at all. And that is possible. So they have a fixed mindset. They are not reflecting and self-reflected in the inner world, in the growth journey, and or they don't have a mindset around trying to continuously improve. They maybe don't even have goals. They fear even having and or setting goals.
That was really good what you just said there, the continuous improvement.
Yeah.
If you out there watching or listening believe that in order for your life to improve, you first have to improve, that's growth orientation. And everyone has that from 0 to 10. 10 means insane levels of growth orientation. 0 means, Not really at all. And I was at a training, you were there, love, and I asked a silly question now in hindsight, but I think this is a really good story to represent this. I said, who here is into personal development? Everyone's hand shot up. But what I should have asked is from 0 to 10, how into personal development are all of you?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have got their numbers. And then what Emilia said is what you should have done is ask what books they're reading right now.
Yeah.
See, everyone's going to raise their hand for I'm growth oriented.
Yeah, it's cool.
Everyone's going to raise their hand for who has goals. Me, goal to eat pancakes this morning, which I did accomplish, FYI. But seriously, no one's going to identify as I'm not growth oriented. I don't believe in myself, and I'm not into personal development.
I'm terrified of dreams and goals.
And this is a really important understanding too, because I always say this, how was your sleep? Good. Okay, what if your good is my terrible? What if my blue is your red? The point that I'm making is it's all relative.
Hi, Amy and Chris Lennius here to give a quick moment of appreciation for Alan and Emilia. We have been working with them for a few months now, maybe 6, maybe going on 6 months now, and we appreciate you guys so much. To see you guys work as a team, to help couples work as a team is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. Not only have you helped us reconnect and helped us with our marriage, you've also helped us through big life moments, with boundaries, with creating our own stable unit at home. We appreciate you guys so, so much.
Yes, truly heartfelt appreciate you guys and everything you've done for us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
We love you.
And I know that I'm not going to get weird into the Einstein's theory of relativity here, but seriously, if I'm going 80 miles an hour and you're standing still, you think I'm going fast. But to someone going 160 miles an hour, I'm slow as shit.
Facts.
So my point is that no one's going to identify I'm getting bad sleep, I'm not growth-oriented, I'm not goal-oriented. So you have to understand. But if I'm going 80 miles an hour and Emilia's going 85, we're slowly growing apart a little bit because she's got a higher speed, a higher velocity than I do. Okay.
Right.
So the second type.
So the second one is actually consider the nudger. So picture like a person and then a giant big hand just poking. Poke, poke, poke. Nudge, 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 nudge.
And
right?
for those of you not on YouTube, I just
nudged me.
Nudged
a little
Emilia.
nudge. So this is that role that, you both are into growth. So in that question, who here is into growth? You'd both raise your hand, right? The growth oriented person would actually probably be like, yeah, I guess I kind of am. Cue the massive humility that growth oriented people inherently have because they're always improving. So they always feel like they're stuck. Yeah. But the person that's being nudged is the less growth oriented partner in this scenario because they have given that permission slip to their partner to say, hey, listen, I might not be at the same velocity or growing at the same rate as you. What we talked about was the project, expect, and then build resentment and contempt with your partner, which is what a lot of us growth-oriented humans do, especially when we learn something, right? If you learn all of a sudden how to, I don't know, talk parts, right? IFS or something like that. And you learn how to go into your inner world and do a really deep meditative process within yourself. All of a sudden, you're going to start talking that way with your partner and projecting as if they have those same skill sets. If you go to a training on that, you're going to inherently and unconsciously project that your partner has those same skills and that you guys can bridge the gap together. Your partner, on the other hand, is going to feel like, hey, babe, by the way, I have no freaking clue what you're talking about.
Our best example for this is Emilia grew up with cats, and I have 2 cats now. Shout out to Tao and Tilly girl. But I didn't know what I was doing at the beginning.
Right.
And Emilia would expect me to be able to herd cats because she can easily. They love mommy and she's the cat whisperer. And I'm over here I can't even whisper in cat. And
you forget, the growth-oriented person forgets how much effort you put in to achieve those skill sets.
Exactly. Exactly. Just like in the gym when we're weight training and she will spot me in a way that isn't optimal, I'll get frustrated sometimes.
Right.
These are just examples of the project, expect, and then resent. So I project onto you that you're, you know exactly how to spot me.
Mm-hmm. In the way in which you want, in the time in which you want.
I expect you to do it perfectly the first time with no errors or failing forward. And then I resent you when you don't do it properly.
Right.
That's how you build contempt. That's the formula.
Not communicating it at all.
Yes, that's the formula for contempt. And again, Emilia and I are catching ourselves in that all the time.
All the time.
But for those of you who are out there that have the higher growth orientation, you might be the nudger. The nudger is someone who Emilia and I have talked. I told her, please give me the feedback when I'm not doing things with the cats.
Yeah, you have permission.
You have permission
to nudge me in the direction. So one example, I had made a promise to myself and us that we are no longer like, I don't want to go to the movies anymore. Like, I'm done with public movies. Let's just set up and have a home movie theater. And I literally that was like growth for me in a specific area. And I had made that promise to myself, made it to Alan. And then the next day I'm all of a sudden making plans with my mother and my sister to go to the movie theater to watch Moana 2,
which
we're
just
watching
watched
tonight.
last night. Yeah.
And
tonight.
so in that moment, I had previously given Alan permission slip to nudge me when I am acting out of integrity with that which I aspire to do. And so Alan had nudged me just like, hey, babe, not trying to control you or anything, but like, didn't you just make a promise to yourself that like you don't ever want to go to the public movie theaters again? I'm like, shoot, yeah, dang right. So like that's an example of a nudge, right? The nudger is the more growth oriented person and or the permission slip holder that the other partner has given. And more often than not, it is the more growth oriented person, because in one arena, whether it be fitness, whether it be finance, whether it be whatever, inner work, you want your partner to grow to the same level, not necessarily because it'll benefit them. Yes, that's of course a part of it, but because you want to be able to connect in that growth gap. What you learn, you also want to be able to connect with them and share with them, right? So the nudger is the one that's poking and nudging the other person to grow a little bit more.
Okay, so the pusher is trying to get their partner to effing grow
without permission.
Mm-hmm. The nudger has gotten permission in advance from their partner to help them bridge the gap to whatever standards they have higher standards in. Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Third category is the inspirer.
Go ahead.
Okay, the inspirer, very inspiring. Mm-hmm. The inspirer is someone who leads by example, and this is when you get so much momentum with a growth-oriented partner that you kind of don't even have to nudge anymore. Mm-mm. So, for example, this is when if Emilia. So earlier today, I was doing house stuff and I was listening to motivational videos, and Emilia, preparing for this, I heard her listening to Brian Tracy. It was a personal development, sales, and persuasion training. Mm-hmm. That's the level of the inspirer. She does her own growth on her own accord, and it inspires me to want to grow more. And then I'm doing my own growth on my own accord, and it inspires her to want to grow more. And it's the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and it just motivates the hell. So I see her working out, I want to work out. She sees me working out, she wants to work out. She sees me eating pancakes again, she wants to eat pancakes again. It's this beautiful growth. I knew you were going to laugh at that one.
No, I didn't have pancakes today. I chose not to.
My love.
But it reminds me of a client actually that I want to pull in here, where she and her partner, New Year's came around and they both want to get healthy, they both want to get fit. And I'm asking her, I'm like, hey, just, is he on the train? Is he someone that like you're going to have to nudge, because you guys live together. So I'm in the background thinking about all of this stuff. And like, you want to get healthy. Awesome. What are your partner's habits? and she said, actually, like, I think that if I just do whatever it is that's going to be changing my life, he usually kind of just follows me. Nice. So she's the inspirer in her household, and her partner just, again, she leads by example, and that's far better in her household than nudging and or trying to push, right? And I think that there's benefit so deeply to the inspirer role because of the fact that when you're pushing, honestly, it's just not fair to you, because you're just giving all of your partner, you're like trying to do everything for your partner and like pushing them in the direction that you believe is best for them without getting their consent. And so I think that it ultimately drains you as a human being, and it drains your soul because you're constantly having to believe in your partner's potential when they don't even realize it themselves.
So everyone, you might be in the pusher role right now. That's where we were in our past relationships. And the goal is to evolve past into the nudger. Yeah. And then if you are in the nudger role and you're doing that really well with your partner, you're nudging each other and whoever has higher standards in what, then you become the inspirer, and it starts happening automatically and it starts to gain momentum. And that's ultimately what you want to get to. And I think that's pretty much it.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What do you think is the most important quality?
Humility.
To lead by example as an inspirer. When you notice that your partner maybe isn't fully interested in what you're interested in, but you deeply believe it will help them to have you lead by example and have them notice.
Ask me it more concisely again, please.
So let's say, for example, you have higher standards in something,
Mm-hmm.
and you recognize that your partner might not really be super interested in it, and you're having a hard time because you're recognizing and seeing, after listening to this podcast episode, the growth gap. You want to remain in that inspirer role. You don't want to have to go into the pusher role, and you certainly don't feel like you have capacity to nudge your partner. What do you think is the best quality for that person to remain in that inspirer role, especially knowing what I just said?
Well, the thing that came up for me even before you asked that question is you have to lead by example first. Like, if you had never done therapy and weren't doing therapy, I would never have honored your teaching in that. And maybe this is a me thing, but I can't stand when people don't lead by example. If you're preaching something that you're not practicing, no. So number one is lead by example, but that's the inspire inherently. So after leading by example, if that's not working, which sometimes I find myself there, then I have to ask questions and inquire as to what someone's goals and dreams are, and then educate them as to why it's so important. So I'll use a tangible example. So Emilia, when I first met her, she has extremely, extremely high goals. I'll keep it vague. Extremely high goals. And one time we're driving, and she said, "What do you think are my 3 biggest bottlenecks?" And I went, "Oh, uh-oh," because I have a list, of course.
And you have a past experience of no one ever
actually
that question
yeah.
and or wanting the actual real answer.
But the truth of the matter is I had already calculated all of her bottlenecks, most of them.
He's a math guy.
Yeah, big math guy. And one of the big ones was sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Emilia did not used to get good sleep. Her sleep hygiene was atrocious, in my honest opinion. I'm sorry, it was bad.
It was bad. It was super bad.
So she'd come over and we would be up late, honeymoon phase, doing all great things. She'd wake up at 5 a.m. and be off to the races in real estate. And I would think to myself, she got 4 hours of sleep? Like, that's so bad for you. And so what I would have to do is sleep more, leading by example, but then I would have to illuminate and educate her as to why sleep is so important. And so I started sending her TED Talks on sleep, and I bought her a book called Memory Recovery or Memory Rescue. And so that's the best way I know how to do it is, number one, lead by example, make sure you are doing that. If you're not doing that, shut your mouth. All right. The second one is educate them. So it's inspire first and then educate them as to why this is so important. So Emilia, sweetheart, I love you. I care about you. I want to see you flourish. And I know that you're used to people not caring about your goals and dreams, but I really, really, really want to see you win. You're never going to win if you don't change your sleep habits.
Right.
It's really critical that you start to understand the implications of you getting poor sleep. And over time, now she's better than me at sleep.
You also
she
expressed a concern too.
Okay, I did. What did I do?
You communicated courageously. You also communicated your deepest concerns from a vulnerable place.
Yeah.
And the impact of my habits and how that might impact our relationship.
So her memory challenges, I was concerned that if you've ever seen The Notebook, so we had watched The Notebook, and I was really concerned that she would forget me and that she would forget us and our memories and all that stuff. And so we've really turned that around. I mean, you, big time, and I was support role in that.
So much.
And I think that this is a good place to end too. The idea that you're going to achieve your goals and dreams without the support of your partner is not real. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
I used to think I can achieve my dreams even without great friends. Worst idea ever. My dreams and goals are hard to achieve even with the most supportive partner I've ever been with. This whole agree to disagree. You can go binge drink on the weekends while I do my goals and dreams in fitness. It's not real, especially not in a marriage. So Emilia and I, we're going to start a family. We're going to get engaged. We're going to get married. We're going to do all these things. We're going to build our dreams together. And we know you conscious couples and singles out there want to do the same. That's why you're listening. This idea that you can just let your partner slough off their standards is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so for Emilia and I to have a magnificent relationship, she had to improve her sleep. And I had to support her in that. And now we both have Aura rings, and you can buy your Aura ring at, I'm kidding. No, we're not sponsored.
Shout out
Yeah.
if you want a discounted link. My clients are obsessed with that.
We are joking. We aren't paid by Aura.
No.
But we do deeply, deeply believe in these Aura rings and in the sleep data that we now get. And now we compare sleep scores every morning. And now Emilia's memory is 10 times better than it was back then, and only getting better. So I hope that everyone just takes something from this, because if I had to push her up a hill to get her to get good sleep, there's no way our relationship would be as magnificent as it is today.
Yeah, it's not fair to you, and it's certainly not fair to me, because then I don't actually ever have to bridge the growth gap. So for you listeners, dear listeners, I hope that this was helpful and valuable to each and every single one of you that are listening. This is such a deeply meaningful topic for Alan and I. Obviously, we could go on and on talking about this, because we see the downsides and the benefit of bridging this growth gap by really bringing what Alan said at the very beginning, what's unconscious to the conscious, what role that you're unconsciously playing in your relationship, because you're naturally growth oriented if you're listening to this podcast, and what role do you want to shift into? What conscious role do you want to shift into? And if you and your partner want to learn more about that, we have Relationship Talks coaching. It's real good.
Yes. I was going to talk about Relationship Talks coaching. I thought you were going to talk about the event.
I will.
Oh, okay. Okay. All
But
right.
if you also want to join us at our next event, this one's going to be the 45th.
She threw a little
Dramatic
curveball at me. Like, wait a minute.
This one's going to be March 20th. So it's the third Thursday of every single month. And we're going to be getting into the top 10 most common ways partners mistreat each other. One of them may or may not be long, dramatic curveball ball. Silence.
Whoa. So Emilia and I, we had looked up on ChatGPT these, and I genuinely put sincere time and effort every single day to try to treat Emilia as the most magnificent. People say treat others how you want to be treated. No, bullshit. Treat others better than you want to be treated. Treat people as well as you can possibly treat them.
Platinum rule is treat others the way in which they want to be treated.
Exactly. And treat yourself well too. Treat yourself well too. Treat yourself as someone you would treat that you love.
Mm-hmm.
But when I looked these up, I went, okay, there's a couple on here that are yellow. So you do green, yellow, red. Green means killing it. Yellow means, Red means you suck. There was no reds, but there was a couple yellows. It was like, okay, interesting. I might be doing some of that. I promise you and your partner are too. Emilia and I work consciously on our relationship every single day. The goal here is not to be perfect. The goal here is to get better. And these are the top 10 most common ways that partners mistreat each other. And by the way, you are doing some of them. And so is your partner.
If you look away,
come and learn them and get rid of the bugs in the garden, because they're going to take the garden. Emilia had a plant today that had some bugs.
No.
Yes, and the plant was being taken over by bugs. So don't let that happen to your relationship. Also, we have Relationship Talks coaching, in case you didn't know. Emilia had already mentioned it. But seriously, if you feel like you're growing apart with your partner and you feel like there's nothing we can do, it's all is lost, what happened to us? We used to be so in love. Now we're disconnected. Reach out. We have helped so many people at this stage, 4 years doing this work with different individuals from all over the world. We've seen massive transformations. People on the brink of divorce, literally on the brink of divorce, that are now wildly in love, and they attribute it to us. Thank you. You know who you are, who are out there listening. So please reach out. It's worth it to invest in your relationship.
Dang straight.
Okay, anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I'm super excited for Moana 2 and dinner, and I am a hungry hippo, so let's go ahead and close out tonight.
Right, so only someone super secure can call themselves a hungry hippo. I love it. The Conscious Couples Couch, for those of you on YouTube, is very flattering.
It's really not.
It's really not. Yeah, we sink into this thing. Okay, thank you all so much. As always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples Podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is A Lazarus 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
The we.